Did you know that the Syrian Revolution, a conflict that has drawn the world's attention, began as a peaceful protest? In the year 2011, the world watched as a wave of revolutionary spirit, known as the Arab Spring, swept across the Middle East. This wave washed upon the shores of Syria, igniting the tinderbox of discontent simmering beneath the surface. The Syrian people, inspired by the winds of change, took to the streets to peacefully protest against the regime of President Bashar al-Assad. Their demands were simple and universal: democratic reforms, an end to corruption, and a voice in their own governance. Yet these were seen as threats to the entrenched powers and were met with resistance. The people's outcry for democracy, for freedom, was met with silence from their leaders. Their peaceful demonstrations were met with tear gas and rubber bullets. Their pleas for change were answered with a deafening silence. The Syrian Revolution was not born out of a desire for war, but a thirst for justice. It was a call for a better future, a future where the Syrian people could express their grievances and aspirations without fear of persecution. The revolution was a plea for the basic human right to live in a society where power is held accountable, and justice is not a privilege of the few, but a right of all. But this plea was met with an iron fist. The regime's response was swift and brutal. Peaceful protesters were rounded up, tortured, and thrown into prisons like Sednaya, notorious for its inhumane conditions and torture methods. The regime's brutal crackdown only fueled the fire of revolution, turning a peaceful protest into a full-blown civil war. The Syrian Revolution, a conflict that has drawn the world's attention, began as the unheard voices of a peaceful protest. It was a call for democracy, for justice, and for a better future. A call that was met not with understanding and reform, but with an iron fist. The call for democracy was met with an iron fist, marking the beginning of a brutal conflict. As the regime's response grew more violent, the revolution began to take a darker turn. The brutality of the regime's reaction to the peaceful demonstrations was a shocking revelation for many. The government, once seen as a protective force, was now perceived as a threat. Soldiers and police, who were supposed to protect civilians, turned their weapons against their own people. Tear gas, water cannons, and live ammunition were used to disperse crowds of protesters, transforming peaceful rallies into scenes of chaos and violence. As the violence escalated, the revolutionaries were forced to reassess their strategies. They had initially sought to effect change through peaceful means, but the government's ruthless response left them with little choice but to arm themselves in self-defense. From that point on, the revolution took on a new, more dangerous character. This escalation was not just a change in tactics, but a transformation of the revolution itself. What had begun as a peaceful call for democratic reform had morphed into an armed struggle against an oppressive regime. The protesters were no longer just activists, but soldiers in a burgeoning civil war. The government's use of force against its own people was not just a violation of human rights, but a betrayal of the trust the people had placed in their leaders. It was a sharp reminder that power, when unchecked, can corrupt absolutely, and that those in power will often go to great lengths to preserve their positions. As the conflict intensified, so too did the suffering of the Syrian people. The streets that once echoed with the chants of protesters now reverberated with the sounds of gunfire and explosions. Homes were destroyed, families were torn apart, and countless lives were lost. Yet despite the increasing violence and adversity, the spirit of the revolution remained undimmed. The people continued to fight, continued to resist, driven by their desire for freedom and justice. This was the start of a full-blown civil war, a war that would change Syria forever. The Syrian Revolution was not confined to its borders. It quickly became an international issue. The tremors of this uprising were felt far beyond the Syrian soil, escalating into a global conundrum that saw the world's major powers embroiled in a complex web of alliances, rivalries, and proxy battles. As the revolution raged on, Syria became a chessboard for international strategy. The country's strategic location in the heart of the Middle East made it an attractive battleground for foreign powers, each with its own vested interests and geopolitical ambitions. The revolution was no longer just about the Syrian people's fight for freedom and democracy. It had morphed into a proxy war that saw the world's superpowers locked in a standoff. The United States, European Union, and their allies backed the opposition forces, supplying them with aid and resources in their fight against the regime. On the other side of the spectrum, Russia and Iran provided steadfast support to the Syrian government, bolstering its military capabilities and providing economic lifelines. The Middle East was divided too, with countries like Saudi Arabia and Qatar supporting the rebels, while Iraq and Lebanon's Hezbollah sided with the regime. This international involvement resulted in a volatile mix of ideologies and agendas, further complicating the situation on the ground. The Syrian revolution was no longer a singular narrative. It was a patchwork of global interests and conflicts, each adding another layer of complexity to an already intricate tapestry. The internationalization of the conflict had significant implications. It intensified the violence, prolonged the conflict, and made a peaceful resolution increasingly elusive. The world watched on as Syria was torn apart, its people caught in the crossfire of a global power struggle. In the midst of this international power play, the voices of the Syrian people were often drowned out, their dreams for a free and democratic Syria overshadowed by the machinations of global politics. The revolution was hijacked, its original goals twisted and contorted to fit the agendas of foreign powers. Syria was now the center of a global power struggle. An arena where the world's major powers flexed their muscles, a battlefield where their rivalries played out, a land where the dreams of its people were sacrificed on the altar of international geopolitics. Behind the politics and power struggles, there is a devastating human cost. This is the stark reality of Syria's ongoing conflict, a reality that's often lost in the whirlwind of international debates and diplomatic maneuvers. Let's take a step back and look at the toll this conflict has taken on the Syrian population. The death toll is staggering. It's estimated that hundreds of thousands of lives have been lost since the conflict began. Each one of these lives represents a story cut short, a family left to grieve, a community shattered. But the human cost extends beyond the grave. Millions of Syrians have been displaced from their homes, forced to leave behind everything they know and love. They now find themselves in foreign lands, living in refugee camps or urban slums, struggling to rebuild their lives amidst uncertainty and hardship. The scale of displacement is so immense, it's difficult to fully comprehend. The humanitarian crisis in Syria is another facet of this human cost. Basic necessities like food, clean water, and medical care are in short supply. Diseases that were once under control are re-emerging, and the healthcare system is on the brink of collapse. Children are missing out on education, their futures hanging in the balance. Amid all this, the Syrian people show remarkable resilience. They continue to hope, to dream, to strive for a better future. But the struggle is immense. The physical and psychological scars run deep, and the road to recovery is long and fraught with challenges. The human cost of the Syrian conflict is not confined to Syria alone. It reverberates around the world, impacting neighboring countries, reshaping global politics, and challenging our collective conscience. It's a cost that continues to rise with each passing day, with each life lost, with each home destroyed. The toll of the conflict is not just measured in numbers, it is seen in the lives of the Syrian people. It's seen in their shattered dreams, their lost homes, their uncertain futures. And it's a toll that demands our attention, our empathy, and our action.